As we sit here and witness the sanction game, or maybe more accurately, this economic warfare being waged against the Russian population by the West, of course, led by the United States, I thought I'd bring a brief word to the matter. I previously touched on it in an earlier video, but I felt compelled to give it a video of its own because I believe it's a subject that deserves a bit of a more fleshed out conversation. And in doing so, I'd like to bring you this article from Markets Insider that really gives you a good sense of what's going on here. So this is a statistic that I've said briefly previously, although in passing, so it was pretty quick. But the title of the article is the following: Russia is on pace to rake in $321 billion from energy exports this year as trade partners continue buying oil and gas. So as you know, a plethora of things have been sanctioned in regards to Russia. The U.S. specifically has, in fact, embargoed Russian oil and gas. We've refused it. But the thing is, the number as a percentage of Russian oil and gas that we receive from them is minuscule compared to, say, Europe and Germany, more specifically. And I'll get into that in this video, but the article goes as follows. Russia looks on course to bring in more than $300 billion in energy revenue in 2022 of its major trading partners, if its major trading partners keep buying its oil and gas, according to a Bloomberg analysis published Friday. An estimated $321 billion in energy exports would be an increase of more than a third from 2021 as Russia deals with economic pressure in the form of sanctions from Western nations for launching a war against Ukraine in late February. Many of Russia's energy customers are looking to purchase supplies from other areas and are not signing new contracts. A widespread embargo on energy sales would sharply cut into Russia's sales, but for now, the US and UK are among few nations that have outright banned Russian imports. The single biggest driver of Russia's current account surplus continues to look solid. Bloomberg quoted economists at the Institute of International Finance, or IFF, as saying in a report, with current sanctions in place, substantial inflows of hard currency into Russia look set to continue. An energy embargo by the European Union and UK and the US would spur a contraction in output of more than 20% and would cost Russia as much as $300 billion in export receipts, depending on price swings, according to IFF. Prices for Brent crude, the international benchmark, and West Texas intermediate crude have climbed more than 30% so far this year, with prices pushed beyond $100 a barrel on concerns that supply shortages from Russia at a time of high demand for the commodity. And in closing here, I would just like to give you a brief picture of what that analysis looked like from the Bloomberg article, and I'll just pop it up on the screen very quickly. So through the roof, as you can see here, prices for Russian oil in rubles have shot up this year. And you can see the chart. It's pretty self-explanatory. And so, of course, we got the news that the Russians, Vladimir Putin specifically, is demanding payments for their commodity in rubles. And, of course, the value of the ruble has shot back up as a result, and it's more or less bounced back to its original value pre-sanctions. Of course, in the beginning, it dipped, but as I just stated, it has risen again. And this, as many or in similarity with many other things that we've been seeing, just exposes this entire theater, which is what it is, for what it is. If you watch Western media, if you listen to political leaders like Joe Biden, among many others, Vladimir Putin and the Russian people are supposedly suffering great losses. And I'm not disputing that the Russian people are suffering. They are indeed suffering at the hands of these sanctions, yes. But to frame it like Putin himself and the people that are around him are taking some great hit is just, I mean, it's fanatical and it's delusional, and it really makes no sense. I mean, the West is painting this economic warfare that's being waged against Russia as some sort of grand victory. There's a lot of flag waving going on, a lot of grandstanding, this false sense of virtuousness that's being perceived every time you turn on cable news and you watch them cover this nonsense of the U.S. standing up strong for Ukraine. And then you see statistics like this, and it just makes you realize how nonsensical the entire farce really is. And just to put this in a bit more of a perspective, this money that they're getting, it's a third higher, I believe, was the number than the previous year. So they're making record profits. Need I remind you, we're currently undergoing an inflation, and the prices of oil and gas in particular are shooting up. Well, Russia is a large exporter of oil and gas. And so, as this article outlined, they're going to make a bunch of dough as a result of it. And, it's very interesting because the picture that has been painted by Western media and by US politicians is that Russia is alone in this fight. Joe Biden said it in his State of the Union speech, and many other people have said it. They have, quote unquote, successfully isolated Vladimir Putin in the Russian economy. They're by themselves. That's a lie. That's a really, really big and bad lie. If you do just a little bit of thinking and digging, you'll, find out how ridiculous that claim actually is. Russia, just like the United States, has allies. Yeah, they do. Really big allies. One being the People's Republic of China, which is their biggest ally, which is the second biggest economy in the world, of course, after the United States. And their ally here has stepped in and is providing to them assistance. And as long as that guy is around, that kind of older brother that isn't taking all too kind to these menacing actions against his quote unquote younger brother, that being Russia, is helping him stand firm. And you wouldn't even get this kind of knowledge from, let's say, MSNBC or CNN or Fox or any other cable news channels that want to somehow inform you that the fight is going extremely swell for the U.S. and for the Ukrainians, and somehow Vladimir Putin is being squeezed for everything he has, and he's isolated, and he doesn't have really much of a where to go, when in reality, quite the opposite is true. These sanctions have not had the desired effect that we were told they were intended to have. Vladimir Putin and the Russians have not changed course. And to be completely honest with you, and I'll end the video on this note, this entire charade has been a complete embarrassment for the U.S. and the West in general. Just look at what's happening currently. So we know that there are peace talks that are going on between the Ukrainian leaders and the Russian leaders, and China, Russia's ally, is aiding in those peace talks. Well, what role is the U.S. playing in all of this? We're definitely not aiding in peace talks. No, not at all. We're shifting billions of dollars into Ukraine, giving weapons to the neo-Nazis, and furthering the bloodshed. That's essentially our role in this entire thing. And the one thing that they were saying and are still saying is going to work, these sanctions aren't working. And so people around the world leaders around the world in foreign countries and whatnot, are looking at this situation, and it's not a good look for America. There are many different things that are going on. At the same time, you have quite probably most notably the devaluation of the dollar, which is a break in U.S. hegemony and global power. You have countries turning towards the Chinese yuan, with Saudi Arabia flippantly entertaining taking or selling oil in exchange for that specific currency. And it's happening everywhere. And this sentiment isn't really being presented in a correct or concise way, as far as I can see it, from any of the Western media outlets. But in conclusion, just don't be fooled into thinking that somehow everything America is doing is working and Vladimir Putin is failing at every single turn. In fact, if you really divulge into the specifics of what's going on in Ukraine, you can gather that they've largely accomplished what they've set out to do, that being Vladimir Putin and the Russians. And it's not this, nobody, or they have no idea what they're doing and they're somehow losing the fight. If you want to accept that narrative for what it is, then by all means, but you wouldn't be doing yourself any kind of favor in doing so. But I would say that it suffice to say that the information that we're getting from our Western leaders as they champion this proxy war against Russia in Afghanistan, as they claim that this is indeed the most pressing issue at the moment, as they ignore all of the domestic issues that they have been ignoring for some time and will very well continue to ignore going into the future. I would say that it's extremely safe to say that all of these different things in combination with each other most certainly spell out political disaster for the current ruling party of the United States.